in. They do not believe in Medicare, and they are voting today to honor their beliefs to abolish Medicare. That has been a consistent message over time. It is reinforced here today. I urge my colleagues to vote no on the rule and no on the underlying bill. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just feel it's necessary to again correct the record that what we have done in the proposal that has just been referenced by my colleague from California is not to destroy Medicare, it's to save Medicare. It's to deal with the problem that we all know that Medicare faces in an open and honest way, and it clearly states in the document, in the resolution that was passed, that anyone, any senior who is in Medicare, on Medicare, or within a generation of retiring into Medicare will not be impacted by anything that we do in that budget. I'd also remind my colleague from California that we stand here today under an proposed open rule where this body, this chamber, will be able to express its will in an open and traditional process of open amendments. And let me be clear to the American people what that means. That means any member of this Congress, any elected member, can come down and speak the voice of his or her constituents and offer an amendment that can be debated on the floor of this House in an open and transparent manner on TV, in their living rooms, so the American people know what we are doing in this chamber. And I applaud you, Speaker, for honoring that commitment that you set forth when you assumed that chair. At this point in time, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 1 minute to my good friend, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Sutherland.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 1 minute. Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the gentleman from New York for my time. You know, I'll tell you, I've been here 5 months, and a few moments ago, I was as angry as I've been in a long time because this afternoon we heard the injection of a Judeo-Christian event that I was taught as a little boy is precious to my faith and the tenets of Judeo-Christians around this world. And I cannot sit and not rise and object and ask everyone in this body, please, let's identify limits to what we will say and where we will go. Because what we say here, the world listens to. But more importantly, okay, the God that we pray to listens to. And so it bothers me greatly. I'm angered at what I heard and what I witnessed. And so with trying to be in control of my emotions, I would just ask everyone, please let's not inject religious events that many of us are looking forward to in our future.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Colorado.
Point of parliamentary inquiry.
Gentleman may state his inquiry.
If this rule is passed, would an amendment be germane that would restore Medicare under the budget?
A chair does not respond to hypothetical questions.
I thank the Speaker.
Recognized.
It is my honor to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Sanchez.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 and 1/2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So 5 months. One of my freshman colleagues said 125 days in the Republican majority and no jobs bill. In fact, all you've tried to do is change Medicare as we know it to make vulnerable seniors pay more and get less. Oh, and then you're also doing education cuts to go after the dreams and aspirations of our young people. That's the Republican way. Today we consider this rule in the Homeland Security's appropriation bill where you actually cut 60% of the monies that the federal government sends to our local cities. Yeah, those cities that are struggling, those cities that protect us. We don't protect the American people from the Capitol. The local law enforcement, the local fire department, the local hospitals. If a terrorist attack or a natural disaster happens, the local responders are the ones who first help the American people, and you're cutting the money. They're already under attack at the local level. They already have let firemen and policemen go, and now you are taking away 60% of the monies that we send to protect the American people. And what's troubling is that you're limiting the cities where we send some of this money, like under the urban security grant.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
You get an additional 15 seconds.
Gentlelady's
You're
recognized
cutting
for
monies
15
to
seconds.
places like Las Vegas and Orlando and my hometown of Anaheim, California, where Disneyland is. Our American people deserve to be protected, and this Congress should get its priorities straight. I yield back. Thank you.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, will we reserve at this point in time?
Gentleman from New York reserves. Gentleman from Colorado.
I yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Tonko.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In just moments from now, we will have a new Democratic colleague from my home state of New York. The Democratic Congresswoman-elect hails from the most Republican district in my state, a district that John McCain won in 2008. Just 1 week ago, voters in her conservative-leaning district resoundingly rejected the Republican plan to end Medicare. Apparently, the Republican majority here in Washington didn't get the message. Voting to end Medicare once was not enough for them. The rule vote that we are about to take will once again deem the Ryan plan to end Medicare as enacted and put us on a road to ruin where seniors will see out-of-pocket expenses skyrocket by at least $6,000 every year as Medicare is ended, so as to continue to do the handouts of tens of billions of dollars to oil companies. In a few moments, after they finish voting to end Medicare yet again, I hope that as my Republican colleagues congratulate our New York colleague on her election, they will see her as yet another face and yet another voice, an outspoken voice to save Medicare. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Who yields time?
I'm going to continue to reserve.
Gentleman from New York continues to reserve his time. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If this rule passes, an amendment will not be in order to restore Medicare under the bill. Again, while this claims to be an open rule, and it is for purposes of Department of Homeland Security amendments, it cannot be amended to undo the budget that is deemed passed in the rule itself. And with that, I will yield 1.5 minutes to the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Maloney.
Gentlelady from New York is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for his leadership and for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to the rule, which will end Medicare as we know it, and also to the underlying bill, which reduces Homeland Security grants by 50% to our cities, to our ports, to our transit. And is there any reason to believe, I ask my Republican colleagues, that there is a 50% reduction in threat? If anything, law enforcement tells us that the number of threats are up since the death of Osama bin Laden. And our police commissioner, Kelly, in New York City tells me that since 9/11 there have been 13 serious terrorist attempts, and 6 of these were focused on mass transit, which has been cut by 50%. We need to remember what law enforcement has told us, that our anti-terrorist efforts have to be right every day, every hour, every second, every time. Yet our terrorist attacks, they just have to be lucky once. So I ask my Republican colleagues, what would be the impact on the loss of lives, on our economy, if we were attacked again as they are trying to do? The chatter is up. Law enforcement tells us the threat is up, not down, and why are we cutting it 50%? And my Republican colleagues, I say to you that you are not just gambling with dollars, you are gambling with lives. And it is not a gamble Democrats are willing to take. I urge a no vote.
Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Yoder.
Gentleman from Kansas recognized for 2 minutes.
Well, I thank the gentleman from New York for yielding time, and I thank the Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today I rise in support of the rule that we're debating here today so that we can debate a bill on Homeland Security. Now, that might come as a surprise to many who are watching this debate, or to the Speaker or anyone else in this chamber today, that we're actually debating a rule that deals with Homeland Security. Now, the fantasy discussion going on the left right now on any topic that comes to mind might be entertaining to some, but for the rest of this country, they'd love to see this body actually debate issues that we're on topic, and that issue is Homeland Security. Agencies like Border Control, ICE agents, Coast Guard personnel, the Secret Service, funding for all sorts of agencies, $1 billion for FEMA Disaster Relief Fund. Are these not issues important enough to discuss on the floor today? The bill prohibits the use of funds to move detainees at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, into the United States, denies the immigration benefits such as visas, admission in the United States, and classification as refugees. All sorts of things that are critical to Homeland Security, to protecting Americans from terrorism, keeping Americans safe. And we're doing it under an open rule, and that's the issue on this rule debate. For the first time in 4 years, we're debating an appropriations bill that affects hundreds of millions of Americans related to Homeland Security, and we're allowing every side to bring amendments down to the floor and to discuss those issues. This is a critical moment. And now how many times the folks on the left want to come forward and obfuscate or change the subject, that's fine. We can have those debates, and we'll continue to have those debates. But we're debating today a rule that will allow this body, in an open fashion, for the first time in anyone's memory, to debate an open rule on Homeland Security. If you have an amendment that's germane to the bill, bring it. If it's found worthy, it will pass. This is the process we used in committee, and it worked. We produced a good piece of legislation that will provide for the security of the homeland. We have an opportunity today to be serious and debate the topic that is before us on Homeland Security, and know how many times the left attempts to change the subject from what we're talking about. We know that the Homeland Security of our country, protecting us from terrorism, is a critical issue, and we will debate it, no how many times the left tries to stop us.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Colorado.
The gentleman mentioned the open rule. The open rule itself is largely non-controversial, strong support from both sides of the aisle. What is contained in this rule is the broadest sweeping policy change in recent history, namely the elimination of Medicare. That is the controversial element of this rule, which is deemed and passed by the rule itself. With that, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 2 minutes.
I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For years, working Americans, paycheck after paycheck, week after week, have paid taxes into the Medicare Trust Fund. And after they paid those taxes, this country made a promise to them that Medicare's guaranteed benefits would be there for them for the rest of their life. The issue before the House today is whether we honor or dishonor that promise. The Republican plan to abandon Medicare abandons those guaranteed benefits. The Republican plan to abandon Medicare says that rather than seniors and their doctors deciding what care the seniors should get, private health insurance companies make that decision. Part of the promise of Medicare was that health care would be reasonably affordable to our seniors and retirees. The Republican plan to abandon Medicare violates that promise. It raises the out-of-pocket cost of health care for our seniors by $6,000 a year. We agree that Medicare needs improvement and that Medicare outlays need to be restrained. That's why we support giving the Medicare administration the same authority to negotiate prescription drug prices that the VA has, instead of just paying whatever the drug companies demand. The issue in this vote is not simply the value of Medicare. The issue in this vote is whether Americans can value the promise that we made to them in the future. Vote against this rule. Vote to honor the promise of Medicare. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to clarify for the record, again, that this proposed resolution that we are debating, this rule on Homeland Security appropriations, that's Homeland Security funding, is but a simple resolution. It is not law. It will not become law. And that's clearly articulated in the Parliamentary's Guide entitled How Our Laws Are Made on page 8 and 9. So I again feel compelled to clarify the record to ensure that this rule will not end Medicare. And even as our budget clearly states, Medicare under our budget will be saved. Not one senior on Medicare will be impacted by any action in that budget. At this point in time, I continue to reserve our time.
Gentleman reserves the balance this time. Gentleman from Colorado.
Again, I have to disagree with my friend from New York. I've never seen in my 3 years on the Rule Committee such a broad and sweeping demon pass under a rule. Section 2 of the rule clearly states that the House Concurrent Resolution 34 shall have force and effect. Again, force and effect, the traditional language of something that is deemed and passed under a rule. The mere passage of this rule will deem and pass the end of Medicare as we know it, as contained in House Resolution 34, the Republican budget. I'd like to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.
Gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
I thank the distinguished manager of this rule, and I certainly thank members who are on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, we're in the baseball season, and you can imagine a throng of teeming audience, and they're watching pitch 1, pitch 2, pitch 3, and they said strike 1, strike 2, and strike 3. The winning side, the Republicans, of course, cheer, but the American people lose. They're out. They're struck out. Medicare is gone as we know it. Let's not fool around. Let's not try to have smoke and mirrors. This rule ends Medicare as we know it. We don't have to play games. The debt relief that was put on the floor ends Medicare as we know it. And this bill on Homeland Security is tone deaf to the words of the late Osama bin Laden that said, we're looking at your airports, we're looking at your airlines, we're looking at your rail, and this Homeland Security budget cuts all of the necessary security that is necessary to protect the American people. First, we throw out the seniors with Medicare. Then we don't allow for TSO inspectors. We cut FEMA dollars in the face of Joplin and Birmingham and Tuscaloosa. In my own state, there are fires that are burning right now, and we're telling FEMA that we don't have enough money to provide for you. Did you see the story on the news that indicated that firefighters were left watching a man drown because they had to cut the rescue team of that community, and people were crying. Firefighters whose first job is to be a first responder, denied because they don't have the funding to be able to help the people that they serve. I tell you, it's time to vote no on this rule. Strike out those folk and let the American people win.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, can I inquire of the chair how much time both sides have?
The gentleman from New York has 4 minutes remaining. The gentleman from Colorado has 5.5 minutes remaining.
Mr. Speaker, at this point in time, I'd like to yield to my good friend from Georgia, Mr. Woodhull, 1 minute.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just rise to say this is a serious topic that we're talking about here today. The Homeland Security Appropriations Bill. You know, when you pass a responsible budget as we did here in the House, you've got to make tough choices. I learned here as a freshman that we do these 10-year budget plans, but only year 1 matters. Because then the next Congress comes back and does year 2 and year 3 and year 4. So the only serious decisions that we're making in this budget are what happens in year 1. And that's the Homeland Security Appropriations Bill that's before us here today. How are we going to fund Homeland Security for year 1? And we're down here talking about all of these ancillary issues, and I tell you, this one's important. This one's important. This one's happening. This isn't smoke and mirrors 10 years down the road. This is happening today. And the Appropriations Committee has worked long and hard to craft a delicate balance that they could. 42 cents out of every dollar, Mr. Speaker. We're borrowing. Folks talk about we don't have any money. That's not a state of mind. That's a fact. It's a fact. And we cannot afford to shortchange the work that we're doing on the Homeland Security Appropriations Bill on these, I can't think of a kind word to say. I'm not going to say anything at all, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Deutsch.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute. Minutes.
I thank the gentleman from Colorado. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this rule. From the retirees that I serve in South Florida to the middle-class families of Western New York, the American people have overwhelmingly rejected the reckless Republican budget. The Republican budget ends Medicare and replaces it with a coupon that fails to even approach the cost of private health insurance. It guts Medicaid, depended on by millions of impoverished children, nursing home patients, seniors who need home health services, and disabled Americans. Its hatchet job on our budget will destroy 2.1 million jobs when we cannot afford higher unemployment. This plan is opposed by the Senate, the President, and most importantly, the American people. Yet today, Republicans will vote to deem and pass the Ryan budget. The Distinguished Rules Committee chairman who decried deem and pass during the health care reform debate and claimed process is substance has apparently had a stunning change of heart. We were told that using deem and pass to extend health care coverage to the uninsured is an abomination. Apparently, we learned today it should be reserved for slashing benefits to seniors. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this rule. The American people want a bipartisan budget that responsibly reduces the deficit, creates new jobs, and protects Medicare and Medicaid for disabled and elderly Americans, not this Republican budget. And I yield back.
The time has expired. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're prepared to close at this point in time, so I'd inquire of my colleague from Colorado as to if he's prepared to close.
Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you. I yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
Gentleman from California is recognized for one.
The distinguished chair of the Budget Committee spoke here a few minutes ago. He spoke about a moral obligation. An interesting definition of moral obligation, an obligation to maintain the benefits that the insurance industry has, an obligation to maintain the subsidy that the American taxpayers give to the richest industry in this world, the oil industry, billions of dollars a year, an obligation to maintain the tax benefits to the wealthiest millionaires and billionaires in the world. Apparently, that's his definition of a moral obligation. We have a different definition on our side of the aisle. We have a definition on our side of the aisle that says it is the obligation of this society to provide medical care to our seniors. Our Republican colleagues see their moral obligation as terminating, ending Medicare for all Americans who are not yet 55 years of age. Say it any way you want, but that's precisely what your budget does. It terminates Medicare. Is that your moral obligation? It's not ours on our side. Our side is to maintain the promise that when a senior in the United States becomes 65 years of age, they will have Medicare. Our good chairman comes and he says, we're not cutting benefits for seniors. That's not true. In fact, you're cutting $700 billion out of the Medicaid program, a program where 2/3 of the money goes to seniors who are in nursing homes. Thank you.
Additional 15 seconds.
You say it's a moral obligation to cut $500 billion out of the health care bill? No way. That was money that came out of a subsidy to the insurance companies. And you say it's a moral obligation to leave the insurance companies alone so they can continue their rapaciousness against the people of America. I yield back my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
We'll continue to reserve, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from California is Colorado is recognized.
I yield myself the remainder of the time.
Gentleman is recognized for 2.25 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In addition to moving forward the Homeland Security bill under an open rule, which would have strong bipartisan support, and I praise my colleagues on the Rules Committee. I hope that this is the first of many open rules. In addition to moving forward the Homeland Security bill under the rule, this rule includes language deeming the Ryan budget passed. That's right. We're voting once again on the same plan that the American people resoundingly rejected in last week's special election in New York. if this rule passes, the Ryan budget, which ends Medicare, will become final enforceable budget on the House side until a conference report is adopted, which is unlikely to happen in this Congress, especially if the House Republicans continue to insist on the end of Medicare as a condition of passing a final budget. A yes vote on this rule is a yes vote on the Ryan plan and a yes vote to eliminate Medicare. Now, this is the 6th time in 36 years that the House and Senate will fail to adopt the budget, and the House has used deeming resolutions in the past. However, never has a deeming resolution been used for such a tremendous policy change, namely the elimination of Medicare. As then Minority Leader John Boehner said, this legislative trick has been around for a long time, but it's never been used for a bill so controversial and so massive in scope. Now that, Mr. Speaker, was in reference to the Democratic efforts last session to pass the Affordable Care Act. The demon pass was not used at the end of the day to pass that bill, and yet here we are in the 112th Congress with the Republicans seeking to use it to end Medicare. And yes, no bones about it, we are talking about ending Medicare. As the Congressional Budget Office, our bipartisan study group has confirmed, a typical beneficiary would spend more for health care under the proposal than under the Congressional Budget Office's long-term scenarios. Second, the government's contribution would grow more slowly than health care costs, leaving more for beneficiaries to pay. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are talking about the elimination of Medicare under this rule. Not even under a bill, with debate on both sides, not even amendable. A rule is non-amendable. And while this rule provides for a debate of the Homeland Security bill, which will be fair and allow amendments to be put forth by both parties under it, the rule itself, Mr. Speaker, is not amendable, immutable, unchangeable, and if passed by this body of the House of Representatives, will deem a budget passed that eliminates Medicare for the American people. I urge a no vote on the rule, and I also will be opposing the underlying bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have had a spirited debate on the floor of this chamber over this rule. I applaud that debate, because that's what the American people sent us here to do, is to have the debate in an open process, on TV, in front of the American people. And that's what this rule does. This rule is a true open rule where any member of this chamber, Democrat, Republican, can come down and submit an amendment, debate it in front of the American people, and have it voted on by each and every member of this House, so that this House will speak its will. I applaud our Speaker for accomplishing that clear goal he set out. But as we have this debate, Mr. Speaker, I remind all my colleagues that America also sent us a message last November that we need to be honest with the American people. It means that we do not play games in this chamber. And nothing could be further from the truth than the constant arguments that we had to stand up and clarify that this rule kills Medicare as we know it. This rule has no legal effect. This rule will not be presented to the President for signature and become law of the land. And mind you, the reference to the House Republican budget, the Paul Ryan budget, the provision that has been talked about here to great extent, clearly states that it is the policy of this chamber, the policy as set forth in that budget, that all those on Medicare will not be impacted by that budget. All those seniors who are within 10 years of retiring and becoming eligible for Medicare will not be impacted by that budget. We are acting in a responsible manner on this side of the aisle. And we are dealing with dire times. And I was a little disappointed that we didn't have more spirited debate on the actual substance of the rule that guides the bill upon which it applies, and that is the Homeland Security Appropriations bill. We live in dire fiscal times in the United States of America, and we're going to be honest with the American people, and we have to make some tough choices. But this should send a message to every man, woman, and child in America that the days of reckless spending have caught up to us, because we do have to have the debate of where we are going to cut. And we are talking about cuts in the areas of Homeland Security. We better wake up as a body, as a chamber, and recognize that if we don't get our fiscal house in order, not only will we jeopardize our national security, we will go bankrupt. That ends America as we know it. And also, it will destroy the American market that we are trying to ignite in our private sector, because if we do not send the message that we got our fiscal house in order, then people are not going to invest in America, and that will not put people back to work and put people back onto a payroll. With that, I urge my colleagues to support the rule, support the underlying resolution. I yield back the balance of my time, and I move the previous question on the resolution.
The question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker,
The gentleman from Colorado is
I
recognized.
ask for the yeas and the nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. The Chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives, Sir. After 30 years of service in the office of the Law Revision Council and over 34 years with the federal government, I have decided it is time to retire. With your approval, my last day as Law Revision Council will be June 1, 2011. I started with the office just 7 years after it was established as part of the Bowling Committee reforms in 1974. The office was given the functions of classifying new laws to the United States Code, preparing and publishing the code, and drafting legislation to enact titles of the code into positive law. Over the years, I have had the privilege of working on each of these functions, and my career has given me a unique perspective on the content and codification of federal law. I have had at least a technical familiarity with practically every law enacted during the past 25 years and have worked my way through thousands of laws, including countless appropriations, defense authorizations, tax and health reforms, and omnibus reconciliations. We in the Office of Law Revision Council regard the text of these laws with a certain reverence. As we incorporate new laws into the code, every effort is made to ensure that each word, each punctuation mark, and each directive they contain is given the effect intended by Congress. With these systems and excellent staff we have in place in the office, I feel confident that the code is being maintained with high degree of accuracy and reliability that is required for the official code. While accuracy has always been our highest priority, we have also been working on improving the timeless and usability of the code. Since 2005, the time it takes to do an annual update of the code has been reduced by more than 18 months. And last year we introduced the USC prelim on U.S. Code website to allow even quicker, albeit preliminary, updates of selected code titles. As to usability, the code is about to get a lot better. In a matter of days, we will release a new U.S. Code website featuring a new sophisticated search engine, improved interface, and materials to help the public understand the use of the code. The release will soon be followed by further improvements, including hyperlinks to reference code and statute provisions, and integration of the USC prelim and prior versions of the code into new website. Conversion of the code data into XML is another ongoing project which should bear fruit in the near future. The overall organization of the code remains a concern for me, but significant progress was made during the last several years. The codification of Title 46 shipping was completed with the enactment of Public Law 109-304, and in just the past 6 months, Law Revision Council bills to enact Title 41, public contracts, and Title 51, national and commercial space programs, became law. Each new positive law title is a major accomplishment, but the time and effort it took to get these titles enacted indicates the huge task that remains before the goal of an entirely enacted code is realized. It has been a pleasure to work for the House of Representatives throughout my career. I have especially enjoyed my association with the other staff members in my office and have a deep appreciation for their expertise and dedication and the fine work they do every day. I am also grateful for the support and cooperation of your office, the committees on the Judiciary and Appropriations, the Government Printing Office, and the other offices of the House. Respectfully yours, Paul G. Lefevre, Law Revision Counsel.
Without objection, a statement by the Speaker is inserted in the record at this point. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, proceedings will resume on questions previously postponed. Votes will be taken in the following order. Ordering the previous question on House Resolution 287 by the ayes and nays, adoption of House Resolution 287, if ordered, and the motion to suspend the rules on H.R. 802 by the ayes and nays. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Remaining electronic votes will be conducted as 5-minute votes. The unfinished business is the vote on ordering the previous question on House Resolution 287, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Calendar Number 42, House Resolution 287, resolution providing for consideration of the bill H.R. 2017, making appropriations for the Department of Homeland Security for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2012, and for other purposes.
The question is on ordering the previous question. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
Three votes in this series, beginning with a vote on a procedural motion relating to the rule for debating Homeland Security Department spending for the next budget year, providing for an hour of general debate and an unlimited number of amendments. You've heard Democrats speak in opposition to the rule because it contains a provision implementing the Republicans' budget plan. Assuming the rule is approved, we are expecting general debate to get underway in about 3:30 or so, and then after general debate, work on amendments. It's unclear at this point how many amendments there might be, but further amendment debate is scheduled for tomorrow. This is a 15-minute vote. To get more on the bill itself, we spoke a short time ago with a congressional reporter on Capitol Hill. Margetta of Congressional Quarterly is with us. House Republicans have brought up the Homeland Security Appropriations bill as the first to come up since they got control of the House. What's in this bill, and does it hint at all about their priorities?
Well, it hints about their spending priorities, that they are serious about reducing government spending. And that the bill itself contains overall reductions to the department and some very specific cuts that even some Republicans, such as House Homeland Committee Chairman Peter King, aren't particularly happy about.
How do the spending levels in this budget compare with past budgets?
It's a 3% reduction overall, but when you look at discretionary spending, it's actually a 7% reduction, taking it down to $40.6 billion.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us what's in the bill? What are some of the key programs that are funded in it?
Well, the Homeland Security Department is the Transportation Security Administration, the Coast Guard, Secret Service, FEMA, Border Patrol are all lumped into that same department. Of the programs being funded, probably the issue that's going to get the most attention is the fact that the department provides a lot of annual money to states and localities in Homeland Security grant funding, and that's actually targeted for a pretty big cut in this bill.
The rule allows for unlimited germane amendments. Are there any worth a closer look?
Well, actually, the bill does contain a proposal to cut $2.1 billion from grants. That would reduce it to a total of $1 billion, and there are some people who are nervous about the way that the grants would be set up. They'd essentially be in one big pot with no clear indication of how specific grant programs would be funded. Republican Peter King and Democrat Nita Lowey, both of New York, have filed an amendment that would reverse that. So that's probably going to be one of the amendments that would receive a good deal of focus and debate.
Now, who's opposed to this legislation, and what can we expect to hear from them?
You know, because it's the Homeland Security Department has so many different levels to it and so many different components, who is opposed to it and who is in favor of it really does depend on what particular program you're looking at. You know, for example, for something like the Transportation Security Administration, there are a number of people who have concerns about things like the whole body scanners. There are also a number of people in favor of that. When you look at something like funding the Coast Guard, which is in a dire need of new ships, it can be a completely different set of people who are for spending a lot more, and a completely different set of people who are against it.
When can we expect a vote on final passage?
You know, because it's an unlimited rule, it's kind of hard to hazard a guess at this point, honestly.
Rob Margetta of Congressional Quarterly, we thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
And right now, votes continue on a procedural motion related to the rule for debating Homeland Security Appropriations. Should it be approved, we expect an hour of general debate followed by amendments. Also in this series will be a vote on a suspension bill debated earlier directing the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to establish a VetStar award program. According to the Associated Press, President Obama met with a Republican caucus today to talk about budget issues, and here's how the AP covered it. Republican lawmakers pressed President Obama today for a detailed plan on spending cuts, with one leading House member accusing him of thinking about his re-election instead of how to solve problems, according to a Republican briefed on the talks. After the meeting, Republican leaders emerged and mostly repeated talking points designed to gain political advantage in the partisan tussle over spending policy. There was no suggestion that the meeting had produced any concrete progress ahead of an August 2nd deadline for the federal government to raise the federal debt limit or to go into unprecedented default. That's according to the AP. House Democrats will meet with the president tomorrow. Here's a look at Republicans as they left their meeting and offered remarks to reporters.
Afternoon, everyone. We had, I think, a very productive meeting with the president today. We appreciate the opportunity to be here at the president's request to have a conversation about jobs and the deficit and the debt that's facing our country. This morning I released a letter signed by 150 economists who agreed that if we're going to get serious about creating jobs in America, we've got to reduce some of the uncertainty. Some of that uncertainty is caused by the giant debt that is facing our country. And the fact that if we're going to raise the debt limit, the spending cut should exceed the increase in the debt limit. Otherwise, it'll serve to cost us jobs in our country. That's not what the American people want. We had a very frank conversation. I thought it was productive. I'm looking forward to more serious conversations about how we reduce the deficit and the debt and to get our economy going again and creating jobs.
Morning. Today's meeting gave us an opportunity to express some concerns that we have surrounding the current situation in the economy. You know, ADP issued a report today estimating that private sector job creation amounted to 38,000 new jobs in May, woefully short of the amount needed for us to see this economy get back on track and people get back to work. You know, I said to the President today, it's really important for us to focus on growth in this economy. And as we go through the discussions and trying to get the fiscal house in order surrounding the debt limit vote, very, very important for us to look at growth as part of the fix. We can bring the deficit down through added jobs, but we can also get people back to work. We know that our chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Dave Camp, is hard at work at putting together a tax reform plan. I asked the President, hopefully, that he will work with us to do so and to keep out of the discussions surrounding the debt limit and in the Biden talks any notion that we're going to increase taxes. It's counterintuitive to believe that you increase taxes on those individuals and entities you're expecting to create jobs.
It was a unique opportunity where the entire conference got to convey what they're listening to across America. The President laid out from a debt discussion, but from the conference he heard about jobs. He heard about
unshackling the burden of regulation onto small business to get them working again, from Wisconsin to West Virginia to members across the way. What I heard from this president, that he wanted to sit down and find real cuts now. He said there needed to be entitlement reform, and we will work with him towards those ends to direct where we create new jobs, put us on a new path to pay off the budget on a balanced budget and pay down the debt as well.
I want to thank the President and the Speaker for bringing us together today for this important discussion. You know, every generation of Americans has been proud to pass on a better country to the next generation. And yet for a lot of Americans right now, there's a question in their gut as to whether or not our children and our grandchildren are going to have more opportunities. And the foundation that we lay for them is so important. And we can't take for granted that we're just going to continue to have that strong foundation from which opportunity and innovation and ingenuity take place. Our tax policy matters, our debt matters, our energy policy matters. And whether it was our vote last night on the debt ceiling or the conversation today with the President about job creation, we are committed to taking the steps necessary to ensure that that next generation has more opportunities.
Any day Republicans and Democrats are actually having a dialogue, this is a good day. What the President heard from Republican members of the House is that jobs are jobs number one. That is our job. And unfortunately, the greatest impediment we have to jobs today is a lack of confidence in the future. Republican House members were able to share with the President that the job creators in our district feel that the regulatory burden, much of it coming from the President's administration, creates a lack of confidence in the future. Tax policy that is not competitive, a tax burden that is too high, creates a lack of confidence. And then last but not least, a debt burden. The President heard from Republican members of the House that we know that the debt burden is going to lead to high taxes, which leads to low unemployment. Unfortunately, what we did not hear from the President is a specific plan of his to deal with the debt crisis that could actually be scored by the Congressional Budget Office. And we hope there's still an opportunity to work on the drivers of this debt that is costing us jobs, because Republicans know that until we have the confidence that we can solve this debt crisis by dealing with the drivers, our entitlement spending, that we're not going to get the kind of jobs that the American people want and demand.
Let's take a couple of questions.
Mr. Cantor, you mentioned the ADP report. Did the President have a response to that? Did he respond to your concerns?
The President admitted that we've got to look at growing this economy. The discussion really focused on the philosophical difference on whether Washington should continue to pump money into the economy, or we should provide an incentive for entrepreneurs and small businesses to grow. So I think the President was well aware and admitted the fact that private sector job creation is not enough. He did mention that a lot of the losses were in the public sector. Again, our message is focus on growth in the private sector. That's how we're going to help bring down the deficit and get people back to work.
Did the President talk about additional spending?
Well, the President talked about a need for us to continue to, quote-unquote, invest from Washington's standpoint. And to a lot of us, that's code for more Washington spending, something that we can't afford right now.
That's not exactly what I said. That wasn't exactly what I said. I just said we got to take on this debt. And if we demagogue each other at the leadership level, then we're never going to take on our debt. We have a debt crisis coming. We want to deal with this. And if we want to grow jobs in the economy, we got to get our spending under control. We got to get our debt under control. And if we try to demagogue each other's attempts to do that, then we're not applying the kind of political leadership we need to get this economy growing and get this debt under control. That's basically what we were saying. No, not at all. I simply explained what our plan is, how it works. It's been misdescribed by the President and many others, and so we simply described to him precisely what it is we've been proposing so that he hears from us how our proposal works, so that in the future he won't mischaracterize it.
And he said it was not a voucher plan?
He didn't mention one way or the other.
Mr. Cantor.
What was the point of this meeting today? Was it negotiating? Was it optics? Was it public relations? Was
Well, I
it
think it was an opportunity for clearly our members to communicate directly with the President about our ideas about how to get the economy going again, how to create jobs, and our ideas about how we solve the debt problem that's facing our country. I've told the President one more time, this is the moment. This is the window of opportunity where we can deal with this on our terms. We can work together and solve this problem. We know what the problems are. Let's not kick the can down the road one more time. Now's the time to deal with it. Thanks, everybody.
Mr. Speaker, any discussion of the...
That briefing with Republicans earlier today at the White House after gathering with the President this morning. House Democrats have a meeting with the President scheduled for tomorrow. Well, here on the House floor, members continuing their series of 3 votes as work is underway on Homeland Security Appropriations. This is a procedural vote relating to the rule for debate. Democrats oppose the rule because it contains a provision implementing the Republicans' budget plan. While the House vote continues, a look at the federal deficit and the debt ceiling from a Democrat perspective. This is from today's Washington Journal.
Back with Jackie Spear, Democrat of California, one of the Democrats that voted yes to increase the debt ceiling last night. Why did you vote yes?
We have a responsibility to pay for our debt, for our obligations. I mean, you can't use your credit card and then not pay your bills. And we're paying for past debt. Now, the interest in wanting to reduce spending in the federal government is real and important, and we need to do it. But this was a sham last night. This was all about, pinning the tail on the donkey. We got word on a holiday afternoon that we were going to have this vote. The next day, it was done under the suspension of the rules. It was really a joke, and I'm very disappointed that it had to be taken up in this manner.
Republicans say, though, that this was to prove a test vote to show Democrats and the President that a clean vote to increase the debt ceiling is just not politically possible. The majority of Americans don't want the debt ceiling increased, and so therefore you have to have spending cuts included.
Well, I'm for spending cuts. I think if you ask most Democrats, they're going to say that cutting spending is important. But part of that spending is providing a tax cut to the wealthiest Americans in this country. I mean, when you look at a millionaire getting a $100,000 tax cut this year because we extended the Bush tax cuts, that's something we can't afford. We can't afford a war in Afghanistan that's costing us $10 billion a month. And so if you look at what we have to do responsibly as members of Congress, we have to pay our bills.
Congressman Gingrey was just on the show, as you know, and he said part of that responsibility is looking at Medicare, that Medicare must be on the table as well. We can't continue on this current path and tackle our debt and our deficit if we don't include Medicare cuts.
What's really interesting about my Republican colleagues is that they don't get the Democrats at all. We are not going to cut Medicare. We are not going to cut benefits to senior citizens in this country. Now, are we willing to say to the pharmaceutical companies, no longer are we going to allow Part D, which is the prescription drug benefit that was developed under President Bush, in which Congress was tied in terms of negotiating discounts. You bet we'll be willing to do that. In fact, we should do that. When you look at the Veterans Administration and the kinds of discounts that we get for pharmaceutical drugs, it's 2/3 of what we're paying in Medicare. We could save $250 billion a year in just negotiating discounts for pharmaceutical drugs in Medicare.
Also, the Republicans say that this is not catastrophic if you don't raise the debt ceiling, that it's not Armageddon. There's a proposal out there by Patrick Toomey, a Republican from Pennsylvania, and he says the Treasury could pay bondholders with incoming tax revenues and delay other government payments pending a resolution. and that would be an okay way to let the government go about it. You don't have to raise the debt ceiling.
If we did not raise the debt ceiling, in order to pay the interest on our debt, it would require us to cut 35% of the federal government's budget, $3.8 billion a day. Now that means we would stop paying Social Security payments, we would stop paying military personnel. I mean, 35% of the federal budget is a huge part of the federal budget. We cannot take ourselves down this road, and I don't think we will. I think there's a, this is really, as I said before, pin the tail on the donkey. This is a sham. It was, a game being played in a sand lot, throwing sand at the Democrats. Fine, you've made your point. You're going to require cuts. We're going to require cuts, but they're going to be cuts that are rational and reasonable and that affect the wealthiest in this country as well.
I want to get your reaction to Diane Black, a Republican freshman from Tennessee, first year here in Congress, and what she had to say on the floor during last night's debate.
Over and over we hear from economists, both conservative and liberal, that we've got less than 5 years to turn things around or the United States is going to sink under all this debt. We've seen what has happened in Greece and Ireland, and I reject that future for the United States. The time is now to fix this, because we're out of time and we have an opportunity to change for the good the way Washington is spending. But it doesn't seem the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue thinks that we should change anything. They're happy to keep kicking the can down the road, but you know what? The road has run out. In fact, the administration and over 100 Democrats in this Congress want a straight up and down vote on the debt ceiling. Well, that's what we're going to get today. And when this measure to raise the nation's debt limit fails on the House floor tonight, we will be sending the White House a message loud and clear. You will not get another blank check from us, Mr. President.
Congresswoman?
I think she was towing the Republican line. I understand that. I think the President has also indicated that he is very willing to negotiate with the Republicans. That's why he is engaging like I never saw President Bush engage with the Democrats when he was in power. I mean, he's meeting with the Republicans today. He's going to meet with the Democrats tomorrow. And I think that's good for this country, that there's going to be a conversation about this.
He'll be meeting with Democrats on later in the week. Steny Hoyer, the #2 Democrat in the House yesterday, according to the papers, put out a warning to the President. Don't make any deals with Republicans without getting our voice involved. Do you share that?
Well, I certainly share Mr. Hoyer's position. I don't know if the President's going to heed that. I mean, if you look at the kinds of cuts that were offered up last winter, when the huge benefits accrue to those who are the wealthiest in this country, I think he did that knowing full well he didn't need House Democrats. So we've become somewhat irrelevant in this process right now, and I think that's just the nature of politics right now.
Irrelevant.
Why would you? Well, because, I mean, the negotiations go on between the House Republicans and the Senate Democrats. That's what's become relevant.
So are you frustrated?
No, I'm not frustrated. I recognize that that's just the nature of the dynamic right now. I think he will certainly listen to us, and he will certainly fold into his thought process many of the concerns we have. But in the end, he is the leader of our party, and we will march behind him.
All right. Scottsdale, Arizona. Steve, a Republican, you're on the air with Congress.
That segment from today's Washington Journal, by the way, the vote to raise the federal debt ceiling failed last night, 97 to 318. The deadline to address the debt ceiling issue is August 2nd. The House right now is on the first of 3 votes. Members voting on a procedural motion as they continue working on Homeland Security Appropriations debate. A vote on the rule is expected next.
On this vote, the ayes are 230.